Hello, I'm Kathryn Parsons. I'm an artist and welcome to part 2 of my virtual open studio. We are based in my studio, as you can see. Last week we were out on one of Langdyke Countryside Trust's nature reserves, but I thought I'd give you a mini tour of my studio this time and a short demonstration of how I work in porcelain, and then we'll chat about some of my favourite pieces and projects. Just before I show you around, for those of you that don't know my work, I weave together stories of places and people and the natural world. It's about connection with nature and history of places, that sense of place and belonging, knowing the stories and sharing the stories of things that happened in a place, or the plants that grow there and used to grow there, whether it's like the corner of a field where a poet once trod, or the amazing collection of British corals that is held in the Natural History Museum. Quite often my work is linked to a particular project for a moment in time, like the British Science Week a couple of years ago when I worked with Leicester University and their amazing scientific glass blower, or like last year with Langdyke Countryside Trust's 20th anniversary. Often they're created as installations or interventions in historic or heritage or wildlife sites, and I make small treasures for people's homes as well. So on with the tour, and I think we'll start with the most important thing in this whole room, and that is my kiln, which you can see behind me. I love it. It's wonderful. Here we go. It's on wheels so that I can pull it out into the middle of the studio when it's on, and then tuck it back in the corner when it's cool and not being used. And it creates magic, that kiln. The other thing that I love about the kiln and the whole process, so sometimes I use colour, and as I'm painting the colour on, I use oxides, metal oxides and ceramic stains. Quite often the colour that I'm painting isn't the colour it's going to become. So if I'm using cobalt oxide, for example, when I'm painting it on, it's actually a very, very dark grey, almost black colour. You glaze it, you put it in the kiln, you wait for the kiln to do its magic, and it comes out the most beautiful cobalt blue. And copper oxide does the same. It's black when I'm painting with it, and it comes out gorgeous, rich, deep greens. So I love the surprise that you get. I love the change. It feels a little bit like Christmas when I open the kiln lid and you're peeping inside and you're just hoping that you're going to get what you want, and that the clay and the glazes are going to do what you want them to do, but there's no guarantees. Especially when you're heating to that temperature, you get all sorts of stresses and strains in the clay, which means that it will have shifted shape a bit, and it's unpredictable, and I love that side of working with porcelain, and yeah, I love the process. I always think that when I go and visit someone else's studio, one of the most interesting things is what they have on their shelves. So here's some of the things I have on my shelves. Combination of things that I've found, sometimes things that people give me. and I like to tuck little pieces of my porcelain in with it as well, so it's like a natural history collection or like a nature table. And then over here I've got some pieces that I had been getting ready for Open Studios, just really tiny treasures. These are made by pressing a sage leaf into the clay and then painting into the patterns that are left. So they're just little teeny tiny little vases. I think it's time to get some clay out, and I'll show you how I work with porcelain. So I've picked this leaf for inspiration, and I'm going to start by using it for the texture. I think this is really beautiful texture, the veins on the back of the leaf. And I'm going to create a new species taking the leaf as inspiration. I'm not quite sure yet what it'll look like, but we'll find out as we go. And I think we'll go over to time lapse, otherwise this is going to take a really long time. I choose to use porcelain for a lot of my work about the natural world because of the preciousness of it. As soon as you mention porcelain, people know that it's precious and that it's fragile and also long-lasting. And those three aspects of the material feel that they say something, they echo how I feel about the natural world. So there we go, one little new species created. I think this is a woodland plant. I think that's where he would be happiest living. A bit rough and ready, but it gives you an idea of how I work. These three pieces were made in a similar way using porcelain. So a couple of years ago, a friend gave me a copy of a book by a scientist called Haeckel, who in the 1860s was looking through a magnifying glass, drawing the creatures that he found in water. And he found these single cell creatures that are called Radiolarians. And I just can't imagine the wonder that they must have felt at a time when they were only just becoming aware of the microscopic world. To see creatures that look a little like these. So none of these are copies of actual Radiolarians, but they're inspired by them. If you Google Radiolarian, you'll see what I mean. That feeling of looking at something for the first time, it must have been an incredible time to be alive. So I've made these the open boxes intentionally wonky. I really like organic shapes and want the porcelain to move in the heat of the kiln, so I encourage that. I encourage it to move by the way that I handle it, and then I want that combined by the crisp whiteness of the Radiolarians. Sometimes I have projects that are ongoing, and one of those started a few years ago when I was given a tiny box, cardboard box of these minute little shells. It was obviously quite old. I know nothing about it except it was found in my grandpa's house, and it feels precious to me. It feels as though, although we've lost the story of who collected the shells and where they, how they first came into the family, we know nothing about that. We can only imagine, but they retain that sense of preciousness, and it got me thinking about what other little treasures might be found in old boxes. And so I started making my own. I call them my found and treasured boxes, and I've got a few here to show you. So this one is in an old typewriter ribbon tin, a telegraph typewriter. And I love the idea that perhaps this has been tucked away for decades, and you find it in an old cupboard, and you're opening it up and you don't know what's going to be inside, and there's this little collection of natural objects where actually the white pieces are my porcelain, but combined with other things as well. So I imagine this is a little collection made on a trip to Cornwall long ago. So you've got a fragment of a map of Land's End that the map comes from early 1940, and then this little porcelain lichen and some real moss that I've added, and then I put a little hook on it, a little wire hook, so that it can hang on the wall, although it does stand up as well. And then there's this one, which is in a little retro glass bottle, and this one was inspired by corals and colonial sea creatures that live in long lines together. So the central piece is porcelain again, and up the side is I think this is called sea beard. It's a type of hydrozoa, and then there's a little bit of very twirly plant material that I found as well, that just felt like it had that flowing, beautiful movement to it. And then I'll show you this one. So you've got a tiny little box, tiny little wooden box, and then inside is some really tiny lichen. I do like small. So yeah, I've invented this little species of lichen. I like to imagine that it was found on a walk somewhere long ago, and somebody took it home and tucked it away as a precious find. So there's some natural soft moss, and then there's a little piece of paper down the side that's got the words from a poem by Tennyson on it. So thank you very much for coming to my open studio. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and all the Radiolarians and the little treasure boxes here are for sale as part of my open studio, and they're offered as part of the Artist Support Pledge, which is a beautiful scheme dreamt up by a British artist, and there's more details of that in my Facebook feed. Thanks for coming, and I hope that you'll get to visit my open studio in person one day.